Hi, my name is Lily, and today I'm going to be doing a video on stuff falling under the category of like marriage and relationship issues, problems that come up. I feel like when you're in a relationship, it can sometimes be difficult to see things for what's going on because you're involved. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about these kinds of things and the subconscious things going on within relationships. So I wanted to talk about some of that. Some of it might be a little bit unpopular opinion, but that's okay. It hasn't stopped me yet. So one thing that kind of inspired this was sometimes on YouTube I am scrolling and I see these types of podcasts here where people call in and they talk about the struggles that they're having in their relationships, and the person listening will then give advice on the situation. And there are some circumstances where the person's married and they're venting about how they're developing feelings for someone outside of their marriage or outside of their already established connection if they're not married. And most of the comments in those videos are like, "What's wrong with you? You're married. Like, how dare you?" And they kind of have this perspective that if you're married, that you're not allowed to be attracted to other people or develop crushes. And if you do, something's wrong with you. You're bad. And it's a really controlling type of mindset. And it doesn't really address the feelings. It doesn't really address like what's going on. It's just pushing that person to feel bad about it and suppress it and feel ashamed. I get where they're coming from with those comments, and I get that perspective, but it's, feelings, especially like that, they're not normally convenient. Feelings in general are not convenient or logical, and I feel like that's trying to look at it in a more logical way. And I mean, people who are married can develop feelings for other people. It happens a lot. I think the older generations especially can struggle with that. And I think a lot of the people in those comments of those videos are doing exactly that, and they're projecting their own pain experiences onto that, where that happened to them. And I do agree that kind of sucks to be in a situation like that. But I think to sit there and say, like, you're married, you just have to let those feelings go is not really the best way to handle it. Because the feelings don't really go anywhere. It's suppressing it. And so I think it's important to reflect on what the root cause of this attraction is to this other person. And this brings up all these other uncomfortable questions that everyone wants to avoid. And that's, if I am attracted to someone else, does that mean am I really satisfied with my marriage, my relationship? Am I really compatible with my partner? Does this other person that I am attracted to contain a different quality that I don't get with my current partner? Reflecting on these things doesn't make you a bad person. And it doesn't shift the blame onto the relationship or to the other person, making it seem like the current partner is like falling short. But it's definitely important to reflect on these questions and dig deeper on what's really going on. If you try to suppress and ignore it, it will come up in some other way because you can't really get rid of it. There's something in your subconscious that's trying to speak to you to give you a message, either about yourself or your current relationship, your life, something going on. And sometimes it can prompt you to ask questions. Did I get married too early and now I feel like I'm missing out? Did I get pressured to get married when I wasn't ready? Did I get married due to obligation or children? Someone was pregnant. Is my marriage lacking emotional, intellectual, physical, chemistry, or attraction? And there's a lot of shame from society when it comes to even thinking about ending your marriage. Relationships are a little different, but when you're married, it's a lot tougher, obviously. And even if you're truly unhappy, there is a lot of stigma to ending a marriage. This isn't to excuse the desire to cheat in a relationship, but to assess before the cheating happens and analyze what the cause is coming from. Some people do just suck. They don't really care about having a commitment. That's more toxic and selfish people who don't care about being genuine in a relationship. That's not really what I'm talking about. This video is more for people who had a more perceived healthier connection at some point, or they were happy with their partner and then they are now experiencing this desire to pursue others while still involved with that person. It's important to make the distinction of, are you feeling chemistry with this other person or a true connection? Could this just remain platonic, or is there really a desire for something more intimate or romantic in this connection you feel drawn towards? It ends up being easier sometimes to just stay in a relationship that you're currently in than to break it off and start with something new, especially at the risk of letting something go and then not being satisfied with the decision you made. The truth that some people don't like to hear is that sometimes people break up and they move on and they're in fact happier and more compatible with the other person. People like to act like if someone leaves them for someone else, that they're the bad guy. But if they're happier that way, if they're happier with the other person, are they really the bad guy? Would it be better for them to stay in a relationship that they no longer feel aligned with just because you felt abandoned and didn't want them to move on to someone else? There is some variation with this. I'm not saying leave your marriage and children behind to go pursue a mistress, basically. If there are children involved in a situation like this, it's always better to separate yourself from the other parent and that relationship while still supporting and being involved in their lives, the children's lives, but maybe live separately if it's become too much of an unhealthy dynamic household to live with that other person. And if you just truly don't want to be with them anymore. I'm not saying you should drop everything and pursue another connection when you're already committed to someone. If you're just feeling another attraction to someone else, obviously, I wouldn't try to suppress that and just pretend it's not happening. It needs to be addressed and analyzed. If you let it fester and grow, then it could lead to infidelity or other ways of expressing that desire. This can also cause a shift in your current relationship that some partners can pick up on, where people start acting weird and you're like, what's going on? Something, you can pick up on it. So I'd try to reflect on it individually or with a therapist before bringing it up to your partner, because once you say things, they can't be unsaid and words need to be chosen carefully with something like that. If you have a healthy, authentic type of relationship where you can openly discuss things like that, then that would be great if it's fine. But I think most people don't have that type of connection. I think the normal reaction is to get upset and feel angry or hurt, and betrayed, and so definitely handle with care. I think a lot of times this feeling of attraction to someone else indicates something is out of alignment with yourself or the connection you're currently in. People who are having the desire for others while in a committed relationship, who are comfortable being monogamous, aren't necessarily doing it because they're trying to maliciously and betray and deceive their partner because they suck or they're narcissistic. Sometimes it can be the case where they just suck. But sometimes there's an underlying circumstances that is pushing this person away. And that's really the other side of it, is some people feel like if someone feeling like they want to stray in a relationship, they think of them as the bad person. But the reality is are there underlying causes? Is there something else going on in the relationship that's pushing them away? Not an excuse, but realistically, if you wanted to look at the true dynamics of what's going on and not just blame people, do a little analysis. Does that person feel underappreciated? Are they under a lot of pressure? Do they feel disconnected emotionally, mentally, or physically from their partner? Is there a lot of stress and burden going on in their relationship, in life in general? Some people, if they're like in a relationship and they're like a good person, then they'll feel bad and they'll be like, what is going on? Like, I'm losing my mind. Like, I love this person, but why am I feeling these feelings for someone else? You know, like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. If, you know, you can then go crazy and be like, what's wrong with me? There might be something else going on in a relationship that you haven't put together. Because people with like low self-esteem or people pleasing or boundary issues, you know, they might not pick up that they're being abused or disrespected. That is another angle at if you're feeling compelled to like stray in a relationship. It's important to think like, is your current partner doing things? Like, are they abusing you? Are they disrespecting you? Are they bullying you? Are they being really inconsiderate to your feelings? Do they make you feel unloved? Do they make you feel unsupported? Major communication issues. Do they not listen to you? Yeah, people tend to always blame the person who is seeking attention elsewhere, but what were the conditions that influenced this? And that's not going to apply to everyone, but if someone is in a relationship with someone who is mentally, emotionally, or physically abusing them, I'm not surprised that they end up seeking support from someone else or attracted to someone else. That doesn't make it okay, but it's not as bad, in my opinion. I lose sympathy for abusive and inconsiderate people. So, I mean, that is something to consider. There are always going to be the people that say if you're unhappy in a connection, then just leave. And I agree to an extent, but obviously abusive and toxic situations can be very complicated to leave for physical safety reasons, but also there can be this mental prison and manipulation that people use to keep them stuck. There is oftentimes in those toxic relationships, there is high highs and low lows. And that teeter-totter back and forth is a portion of the manipulation tactic to keep people crazy, to keep them. And like a lot of times, people who are manipulative, they know what they're doing and they do that on purpose. Maybe even all of them know. I don't know. I haven't taken a survey of that. It's on my to-do list. Yeah, but this switch up of like loving you one second and then hating you the next, this push and pull, it creates that confusion, and that can trigger major self-worth issues. And it's like attaching to the way this person is feeling about you. So if it's like they, they're hating you, it's like, oh my God, I have to fix it. And that's that low. And then if they're loving you and it's fine and it's great and everything's great, and then they'll switch up. And then you want to fix it. It's sad. It's crazy. Having children involved in a situation like this makes it way more difficult, as you want to be considerate of how this is affecting them. But I know sometimes it is hard. And that's how all this, trauma happens. And that's the cycle of trauma and abuse is you grow up with parents that are narcissistic or they have this dynamic going on, and then you can either recognize that behavior and not do it, but a lot of people end up mimicking it. If you're feeling drawn towards someone else and you're in an abusive relationship, it can be the universe's way to try and pull you out of that situation, assuming that this other person you're drawn to is not abusing you. It can show you that not everyone will be like that and that you deserve better. Sometimes it really does take help from other people to see your worth when you can't see it yourself. And I'd like to think that that can happen. Sometimes it's not going to happen with everyone, but I think if you're in a really toxic situation for a while, I feel like there's going to be people here and there to try and get you to see how toxic and unhealthy it is. And most of the time during that, you're going to push that away or push away that help, or you might deny it at first, or you might even see it and be like, yeah, I know it's bad, but like you feel trapped. So I think a lot of times the universe will send you these people that are almost like angels, and they're like, yeah, you should get out. This is not okay. And there are those people that will show you that's not healthy. And you got to break out of those cycles. It's a very tough mental cycle, mental prison people get stuck in. Very tough to break out of. Especially, it really triggers those self-worth issues. It's really hard because you have to really feel that you deserve better. And if you don't feel you deserve better, you will stay stuck. That's not to say you should blame your current partner if you feel compelled to stray due to something lacking in the current connection. You should reflect on if you can communicate what would make you feel more supported in the relationship. Some people don't even realize what they're seeking in a relationship, or like how to put it into words, or feel embarrassed for even asking. And men definitely struggle more typically when trying to communicate their feelings. Say the guy needs more affection or positive affirmations in the relationship. Due to the toxic masculinity culture that we got going on, where men should not be emotional or in touch with their feelings, it can be hard to pinpoint exactly what's missing for them in that emotional realm of things and how to ask for it. And sometimes people are not going to be receptive to your feelings. Even some women out there will not be supportive. I feel like a lot actually won't be supportive if a man expresses those desires or feelings. And I do see some men complaining about that on the internet, that like there are women out there that will perpetuate this toxic masculinity and say, man up, don't talk about your feelings with me. But this is definitely rooted in that toxic masculinity, subconscious programming that is going on, and it exists in men and women. And if someone does that and they're just completely dismissive of your feelings regardless of gender, that is an indication of who you're with. They don't really care about your emotional well-being, and you're not in alignment with them. Because who you're with in a relationship, they should care about how you feel. And you deserve someone who will listen and care about your feelings and want to work on things with you regardless of if you're a man or a woman. And like I said before, if you feel you don't deserve that, then you're going to stay with someone who is unsupportive. And that's why working on your self-worth is so important, and recognizing no matter who you are, you deserve to have someone love and respect you in a relationship and listen to you and care about how you feel. Yeah, it can be hard, especially if you grew up with really unsupportive parents. It can be tough because those problems just carry on into your adult relationships. So yeah, until you decide you deserve better, you'll keep accepting the bare minimum from partners. And so if you've tried to communicate how you feel and what you desire in a connection and things aren't changing, or your partner is not receptive of your needs, it's time to consider if they are not actually compatible with you anymore, or at all if they never were. And it might be better to go your separate ways. And if they really don't seem to care or want to change or take you seriously, they may also be lacking emotional immaturity. And it's up to you if you want to stay involved with someone like that. Because eventually people will get sick of that if their partner is refusing to change. But being sick of it doesn't mean that they will end up leaving or breaking up with them. And a lot of people stay in situations that are out of alignment due to fear of being alone or other reasons. So It's important that if you know it's not okay, it's not in alignment, it's important to let it go. You know, when you let go of things not in alignment for you, it makes room for what is alignment with you. And it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Compatibility has to do with intellectual, physical, emotional attraction. And as people age, they tend to change and evolve on all levels, sometimes not at the same pace or in the same direction as their partner. And this can create a disconnect in a relationship if it ends up not aligning like it did at one point. And so sometimes people get married with someone that they're not truly compatible with in all of these categories, and this becomes more apparent as they get older. I have another video on that I did on compatibility and chemistry differences in relationship. Sometimes people do leave a marriage or relationship for someone else, and the grass is not greener on the other side, and they end up regretting leaving that person behind. But that was probably a lesson that they needed to learn anyway. And if they ended up staying in that situation, they still probably would have sat around and wondered what it'd be like if they went after that other person or broke up with them or pursued this other path in life. And oftentimes, if you have that nudge with someone, you're gonna keep running into that. And you might feel like, would they end up being pulled towards other people anyway, until they scratch that itch of, what if I did something else? What if I pursued someone else? And some lessons you can't avoid, like a lot of karmic lessons that you can see in the birth chart, you can't avoid. And I think ultimately, if you make a decision like that to break up with someone, it's never going to be 100% in either direction. There's always going to be a part of you that wonders, like, what would it be like if I stayed with them? And what would it be like if I had left them and didn't? And that's just the trade-off. So sometimes karmically, if you're not with the right person, you will be attracted to other people to kind of get you away from them, essentially. The universe is trying to get you to move on. Sometimes it pushes the person you're with to actually be unfaithful to you because there's a lack of alignment in the connection, and it's trying to get you to break it off. And infidelity definitely causes a lot of pain, but that pain is lessons. That's how we grow, is through the pain. And especially those lessons are self-worth. Do you really respect yourself enough to move on from someone who has betrayed you in some way? And the universe will keep throwing problems at a connection that is no longer in alignment until the message is received and a separation happens with people that you're working out this karma with. A lot of karmic relationships involve disconnecting indefinitely at some point when the lessons are complete. But sometimes it's determined that, like, people need to learn how to work together or compromise in connections. It really depends on the type of lessons you're here to learn. This is more common with people who have children together. I remember seeing a thing online that was like, leave that toxic man alone before God makes you his baby mama. And like, I mean, for real though, if you keep messing with someone that you're not aligned with, that will happen. I've read that too, that like if you're with someone and it's like a karmic soulmate, you're supposed to learn lessons and let go, but you're not learning the lessons, then like, okay, you're going to now have a kid with them because you're so stubborn, you're not learning the lessons, you're not seeing clearly. So now you have a kid together, and now you guys are toxic together with a kid because you didn't want to listen before. So, I mean, and that really is having children. It is karma. It teaches you lessons. You know, you have so many lessons with your children, your family. A lot of people end up getting married to someone they are karmically connected to, like karmic soulmates, instead of like a regular soulmate. So the karmic soulmates are typically for lessons that you need to learn with each other. and you tend to mirror the shadow aspects of each other and childhood traumas that need healing. Where just regular soulmates, it's more harmonious, people you get along with more, there's not as much conflict. Soulmates aren't just romantic, it can be someone in your family, platonic friends, but in romantic connections, it's supposed to be more harmonious and supportive and not like toxic and unhealthy. These karmic connections typically have a past life influence, where you dealt with these people before in a past life and now you're reincarnated again together to work out these lessons. It can also be like family karma or family patterns, like patterns that your parents had in dating and relationships. They pass that on to you. And that's like the same thing as like you growing up and watching your parents exhibit these unhealthy behaviors in their relationship, and then you repeat that. It's the same thing. It's just called, I just called it family karma, but like it's the same concept. Sometimes the lessons aren't as extreme, but a lot of times they can get really toxic. But yeah, these are connections that are just, you're having a lot of problems. But it can start off more positive. And that's on purpose, because if the connection was terrible from the beginning, you would be less likely to stick around and learn all the lessons that you need to learn with them. And then sometimes these lessons don't activate until you've been together for a while, or you hit certain milestones, like you get married or you have a child or you move to somewhere else. You know, things could be good for years and then you get married and then it's like everything changed, or you have a kid and, you know, things are just crazy, because I mean that's what happens, is you go through stuff together and you're like, wow, this person sucks, or you know, whatever. These changes can also be activated by certain astrological transits, which can cause both inner and outer change to one or both people within a relationship. Ideally, it would be nice if people could get married and love each other the rest of their lives, but unfortunately, people don't get married to life partners or soulmates, and sometimes you have to go through a lot of karmic lessons before finding a true soul connection that you vibe with that is less turbulent. Not everyone has this, though. It depends on what you decided to learn when you wanted to reincarnate here. Some people meet their life partner very early on and they stay together their whole life, and there aren't too many major issues. They're in love. It's not toxic. It's healthy. And, you know, that is just, people have different lessons to learn. And you know, they might not have that, but they have other issues that maybe you don't have, or, you know, whatever. So it just depends. Sometimes people can find like the same lessons in different people if they keep repeating the same patterns and they're not like acknowledging where they're going wrong in these relationships. And these are patterns that they keep enabling consciously or unconsciously. I have known people before that know exactly what they're doing is wrong and hurting them and bad, but they're like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then there are people that are just unconsciously like, I don't know, I just, you know. There is the phrase in marriage called the 7-year itch, where couples can start to experience more dysfunction around this period in their relationship, marriage. This can be if you're in a relationship for 7 years, but also if you're married for 7 years. This relates to a phenomenon in astrology called the first Saturn square. Saturn generally takes 29 years roughly to make a full revolution around the sun. At 7 years is at a 90-degree angle to when the cycle first started, when you first started dating or you first got married. This squaring aspect in relationships can cause challenges and tend to cause a lot of breakups. If you ever see like pop culture or something, I see it all the time. Couples together, married for 7 years, broke up. It really is when you start paying attention to that. The problems that come up can be worked through sometimes, but a lot of times a separation is best. And people go their own ways. And it doesn't have to be such a bad thing. I think people would be better off if they weren't so attached to making it work with a particular person. Sometimes you just go through too many problems with a single person. The trust and intimacy has been broken so much that it's too far gone to repair, and ultimately it would be better to move on and maybe start with a new person, not like immediately after a breakup, but after some time. It's especially when you've been with someone for so long, this person has seen past versions of yourself that don't exist anymore. And maybe these were, negative aspects of yourself that you're trying to move past. And it can be hard if people are holding that against you, or they still have this version in the back of their head, where a new person, they don't know that past version of you. You might have mentioned it, but they don't know that, and they're not going to be as likely to hold that against you. They just know this more evolved version of you that you are now. Sometimes going through hard things as a couple can bring you together, but sometimes it is too much, too many burdens to carry. Okay, switching gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about people in relationships. Now, a little bit about pursuing relationships and stuff. I don't know. I'm going to jump around, but switching a little bit. But realistically, a soulmate that you have romantic potential, like if you're single or whatever, a soulmate that you have romantic potential with, they could already be in a relationship with someone else when you meet them, a relationship or married. And that's something that I don't know, people get a little upset about that. But realistically, that happens where you meet someone, you really vibe, and you start, I guess it kind of connects to what we were talking about in the beginning of the video. But you meet someone, they're already taken. You start liking each other, and you're like, oh no. Now what? So that happens, obviously. If that happens, and the person they're with is a karmic connection that they're still dealing with, then they still have lessons to learn with that person. And they're not ready to pursue something with you. Right? Especially if that connection that they're in is toxic, that they're dealing with, then they may need time to learn those lessons. And then if it doesn't work out with that person, they need more time to heal from that experience. Because a lot of times you can meet someone, be friends with them, they're in a toxic relationship, they're just, I don't know, so many people just hang on to those toxic relationships. Oftentimes people are involved in toxic relationships, but they're not willing to break it off yet, and that's an indication that they're not ready to let go of that connection, even if they still feel this connection with you. There's still this mirroring of shadows that's going on, and trauma and things to be played out with that connection. And in that case, then they're not in alignment with you if they're still wanting to date this other person. And they may not ever be ready, or it may take a while for them to be able to break it off. And everyone moves at their own pace. And if they're resisting change, then progress might be slow in that area. And that's why it's important not to wait on people. Even if you meet someone, you vibe, you're like, oh my God, we'd be perfect together. If they are with someone else, okay, you're not in alignment. Even if there's that potential there, it's like, well, no, because if you're still with them, you're still engaging in this toxic cycle with them, then it's not gonna work. That's why it's important not to wait on people and continue with your life path and purpose. And if they come into alignment with you, then it could manifest if that's in a timeline where it works out. Free will determines how quickly you learn the lessons you need to. And I might not decide to break up with them ever. But sometimes meeting someone else that you're more aligned with can be a catalyst to get them away from the person they're stuck in the karmic cycle with. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. If you're in a karmic relationship and then you meet someone you like, you're attracted to someone, you're like, it kind of can like break you out of that and be like, oh, it doesn't have to be like this. Yeah, it can be the universe's way of pushing you out of an already established relationship that is unhealthy or just stagnant. Sometimes it's not even like toxic. It's just not good for you. You're just not really aligned. It's just like, I don't know. You just don't vibe. You're just not vibing. Some toxic couples stay together for years, decades, lifetimes, despite very unhealthy behaviors. And people think that if someone is in a relationship that they are off limits and you should be repulsed by them. How dare you even think about that when they're taken bad? And, you know, I just think that's funny because it's like as if feelings and connection can be turned off. Like, I get the disgust, I guess, but the reality is those people are often in relationships that are unhealthy, toxic, loveless, or they're just with them out of obligation. They have kids with them. They have to live with them. They whatever. Feelings and connection are not exclusive to commitment. And some people may say that makes you have low self-esteem or you're being a homewrecker if you're liking someone that's taken or whatever. And sure, if you purposely seek people out to try and date people in like a casual way and you seek out people who are taken, like, yeah, that's not nice. I'm speaking more about deeper emotional connection that begins to form platonically while one or both people are already in established exclusive relationships. People can also have many different karmic contracts, and you can have one with the person you're dating, or you can have one with other people you're not dating, friends or whatever. And this karmic contracts can sometimes feel like a magnetic attraction towards someone and a pull towards someone, including when you're already in a committed relationship. And that can be a sign that you have karma to work through with this other person. If you're drawn to them for some reason, karma isn't always bad. It's just lessons. That's not to say you should, mention this earlier, that's not to say you should try and pursue a second person if you're feeling drawn to them. But when there's a strong pull to someone, it's often some sort of message or lesson to be learned. But yeah, not always. It's not always like a good thing. It's like, it might be a negative pattern that you're experiencing, or a negative cycle. Sometimes the karmic lesson can be to leave the second person alone and not cheat or engage with them, especially if that's a negative pattern you've had before. If you've had problem in the past with cheating or straying, and you're like, oh my God, I feel this draw towards this other person. Oh my God, like, okay, well, maybe you should relax, like sometimes a lot of those karmic connections, they can be so intense that they can feel like love, like destiny, like, oh my God, but it's supposed to feel like that, and it gets really sticky, it gets really complicated. But it's a karmic lesson. So yeah, karmic lessons, you can think about like what if this situation I'm in now, what if it played out in a past life like this and it's come to repeat again with these same people? And that's why you feel such a draw towards certain people. It's because there are lessons you need to revisit with them. It's, sometimes they can be like tests from the universe to see if you're going to step back into those negative cycles, whether that's cheating on a current partner or, just engaging with people that aren't good for you or don't have a good effect on you. If you were raised in a chaotic environment as a child, then toxic relationships might seem normal and just how all relationships are, but that doesn't have to be the case. There needs to be certain lessons learned, and until they're completed, you will feel compelled to stay with people, even if there is a lot of dysfunction, unhealthy dynamics, because that's what you're used to, because that was the environment you were raised in. That's why some people may separate from one another, but then are drawn back together. Like you stop talking to someone, but then you find your way back. Well, there are more lessons to be learned. But that can be a part of the test as well. Are you going to keep going back to someone or a situation that's been proven unhealthy time and time again? Are you going to let it go? How many times are you going to get cheated on or disrespected before you realize it's enough and that they truly don't care about your feelings enough to change? Love is not enough to stay in a relationship. You need mutual respect and care for each other's feelings and compatibility. You're cheating yourself out of true happiness and fulfillment by staying in a connection that's not in alignment with you, that causes you grief, and not in alignment with who you're trying to become and develop into. A big part of why people stay in relationships that are out of alignment is that people are not living in connection with their heart space or heart chakra. I think men experience this more, as there are a lot of expectations for men in society for how they should act, for everybody, but for men, it's what they should achieve and what this looks like, how they should act. And a lot of men think that this blueprint for, I'd like to blame the American dream thing that was fed to Americans for a while, where you get married, have a family, you be financially supportive, you buy a nice house, have a nice car, and, then you'll be happy. But sometimes people will do that and they'll have it all and they still feel empty. And they're like, something's missing. Why do I have it? Society says this is what I should want to feel happy. And yet I have a wonderful life. I have great wife, great family, and yet I don't feel happy. That is because they are actually disconnected with what they truly want and desire, and they were making decisions just based off of what society wants from them, Men are more commonly disconnected from their heart space, and so they're not making decisions on what is truly aligned with them on this level. Perhaps they just got married because they felt it was the right thing to do, because this person was nice and loved me and was nurturing, but was there true compatibility and connection? Just because someone loves and cares for you doesn't mean that the connection is fulfilling on a soul level. And it's important to be honest about that sooner than later. Maybe they had kids because that was what they thought they should do. Sacrifice dreams because that was what was expected from them. Parental pressure and influence can sometimes be a factor with this, where parents can put pressure on you to go a certain direction in life, And so you did that to appease them, and then it's not satisfying because it's not actually what you want. It's not really in alignment with what you desire. And that can be too, if your family wanted you, get married, have kids, and do all this, and you're like, well, I don't know, I kind of wanted to travel. I kind of wanted to do other things. I wanted to be gay. It's a bit extreme, but it still happens, you know? Yeah, a lot of men learn to suppress their feelings either by their own emotionally immature parents or pressures from society and societal norms of how they should conform and how they should live and be in life. And I think this is the root of a lot of like midlife crisis for men, because they have lived this facade for so long, and then they're like, oh my God, like, is this really what I wanted? And that's a tough place to be in because, you know, I feel like if you're a good husband, father, of course you love your family, your kids and everything, but then it hits you like, oh, you didn't really do what you wanted in life. Of course you still love your family and whatever, but sometimes though, that can be the husband, father that sucks and they're abusive or they're like avoidant or dismissive and they don't really care about their family and they're an asshole because they didn't do what they wanted in life. They just did what was expected of them. And that's why the point is it's important for men to, not just men, everybody, to live from their heart space and to live authentically and to figure out what really is truly aligned with you. And because you'll run into that problem of, at some point, who have I been living for? If it's not yourself, it's not what you really want. So if you are not attracted to someone on a soul level, then you're less likely to stick around if their physical appearance begins to change over the years, if you're married in a relationship due to illness, pregnancy, or weight gain. And I feel like, again, this might apply to men more. I feel like men are more likely to choose a woman based off of looks than true compatibility, and that's just because more men are generally not living in their heart space. They date someone based off of, oh, they're pretty. And if appearance is mainly why you're with someone, as you age and things change, your feelings may change because it was never about who they truly were inside as a person. I think this is why polyamory couples are becoming more popular, or maybe just mainstream. I think they've always been around doing their thing. It just was not as open. It was not as accepted. But yeah, people will get into that if they've been monogamous for a while and they decide to open up their relationship to keep things exciting. If the spark has died, this can work if people are both on board, truly with it. But I think sometimes it can be one person's on board and the other's like, oh. But I think in those types of situations, it's important to ask, why things have gone stale between you two. Is there actually a lack of compatibility in the connection that is contributing to this? And, are you really not satisfied with the connection? And instead of letting this person go, you just want to stay together, but not exclusively, completely anymore. They want to see new people, but they don't want to give up the stability they already have in case there's not anything better out there. Is this a way to avoid being alone? Seeing what else is out there, but not completely cutting the cord? And for some people it works. It's a great solution and, they vibe. But for others, it's kind of delaying an inevitable breakup. Because, is that desire to date other people because you don't like each other anymore? breakups and divorces are hard, right? Of course. But it can put you on the path that you need to be on. And a lot of times it will make more sense when you look back and see how it was better for you in the long run. Breakups can sometimes trigger a spiritual awakening. I mean, even if it's not a spiritual awakening, it definitely causes realizations and changes and big shifts in someone. It's a very pivotal experience, especially if you dated or were together for a very long time. It can be very transformational, which is painful. It's supposed to be painful. It's not fun. But then the universe can align you with someone who is a better match and appreciates you and is more of what you desire in a partnership, if that is what you want. I mean, some people go through a breakup and they're like, I'm just going to be alone forever. Which, you know, whatever. To each his own. Might be me. Part of the lesson with that is to let go of what is no longer serving you and to make room for what is more aligned. And that is a big theme everyone goes through a lot in their life, some more than others, is you gotta let go. Gotta detach. What is that? Attachment is the root of all suffering. Some people can go through life and they're fine with these attachments, but some people, especially if you're on a more spiritual path, you will be tested with that attachment thing, and you'll be like, oh, you're attached to this job? No, you're fired. You know, or like this relationship? No. This home? No, you're gonna be house burned down. You know, like the universe will push you to let go and to like transcend or whatever. It's great. Anyway, so there is this book I read by David Elliot. It's called Healing. And in it, he talks about how divorces are normally long, drawn-out custody battles and hearings. And sometimes the couples that are arguing about the last dollar, he suggests that they're actually not ready to let go of the relationship, and the drama of it can be so addicting. And he suggests, you know, what if the pattern of blame and anger could be broken when dealing with that kind of thing. He suggests that since marriage began with a ceremony, why not come together in a releasing or healing ceremony instead of fighting in court? You could honor the time you spent together, even if it was conflicted and without the need of finding blame or fault in what happened. And this can allow people to own up to their incompatibility and acknowledge the time they had together was sacred, instead of trying to bury it in regret and presume it was a waste of time. If children are involved, it can be a great time of making intentions of remaining peaceful to raise them. And just because you don't end up forever for the rest of your life, it doesn't mean it was a waste or a failure. There seems to be major guilt involved with getting a divorce. And I think a major factor has to do with the pressures of organized religion, but also our societies in general put a lot of pressure on, if you're married, stay married forever. But part of this was, it used to be much harder for women to get divorced and survive without the assistance of a man. So there was no choice but to stay married if a woman was unhappy or being abused in a relationship. Because she couldn't have a credit card, couldn't own property, couldn't have a job. So, yeah, if the woman was unhappy. But sometimes a man's unhappy, in a relationship. Now it's a possibility that if you are a woman, you can divorce and still have a job and have credit cards and stuff. So realistically, if you're having problems in your marriage, you're fighting all the time, there's abuse, there's lack of compatibility, why would you continue to stay in a situation where you're very clearly not happy? Because of societal rules and programming and expectations, because of sense of obligation to this person. finances are definitely a big thing. I definitely know like a lot of people stay married because they can't afford a divorce. They can't afford to live apart. They have kids together. And that's a little harder. That just sounds terrible. If you're married, you don't like each other. You don't like living with each other. And it really sucks. But financially, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's a tough reality, especially with this increase of cost of living we've had going on. Yeah, but if there's a way to separate yourself from the person that you're not vibing with, that would be ideal. Sometimes the purpose of two souls coming together in marriage or relationship has to do with the children or the child that they brought into the world. And it was important for them to have that child together and to learn the lessons they did together. And looking at divorce in a less hostile way may be a little bit evolved for the current society we live in and a little radical for people. But it would be a more peaceful transition and lead to closure and peaceful healing, which would ultimately lead to more peace on the planet. And that is all I have for you. Thank you for watching this. Bye-bye.